Own Backup protects against data loss and corruption by providing enterprise-level control of data across all your Salesforce orgs from a single dashboard. Interactive graphs make it easy to identify Salesforce data changes over time, and automated daily backups protect your Salesforce data, metadata, and attachments. Manage proactively with customizable smart alerts that notify you whenever data is added, changed, or deleted. Quickly search your entire backup archive to find specific records, remove records individually or in bulk, and stay compliant with internal and external regulations, including GDPR. Compare backups at the click of a button to locate the exact point at which data was lost or corrupted, and recover lost data quickly, regardless of scale. With Own Backup, you can restore data records with their corresponding parent-child relationships down to any level of granularity. Speed up development with Own Backup Sandbox Seeding and Replicate to create anonymized test data sets in minutes, while advanced key management and access controls help to keep your data secure. Backup, compare, recover, replicate, and comply with Own Backup for Salesforce.
We were just a bunch of nerdy kids who ignored the haters. We took their ridicule and we built on it. And when some of us gave up, well, we built on that too. Built resilience, built on a mission to make things a little better every day until the users came. Then the haters were VCs who scoffed at our audacity. This just isn't the way things are done. But we kept building. Users turned into teams, turned into companies, running their entire businesses on our apps. Then the software giants came after us. We weren't proven, we weren't fully featured, our radical cloud model wasn't secure. But we built on. And today, as companies adopt the cloud to move faster, teams are finding themselves slowed down by each other's efforts. The skeptics are claiming we'll never develop innovation at scale. But now, DevOps have come to the cloud, ushering in a new era of transformation. Companies can release on demand across hundreds of environments, innovating faster with fewer conflicts and fewer disruptions. There will always be challenges. There will always be naysayers. And we'll build on.
So thank you so much for everybody for staying up late, wherever you are in the world, and thank you so much for having me. And tell you a little bit about myself. You know, as I said, I'm a Salesforce MVP. I was part of the inaugural class back in 2010. Also, last year, I became a Power of Us Hall of Fame member, and I also finally picked up my 100th Trailhead badge. So now a Trailhead Ranger. And I'm a community college dropout, or as a friend of mine once put it, daycare for 18 to 24-year-olds. And I'm a self-taught Salesforce admin. I've been a Salesforce admin at the place where I work ever since we got it back in 2003. And I'm also a world record holder. I hold the world record for the most times that a speaker at Dreamforce has dropped the F-bomb during their presentation. The previous record was 0, held by every other speaker before or since me. So Salesforce has told me that I need to have my own safe harbor slide. I will try to keep it rated PG-13. So I want to show you just a few formulas that I've written over the years, share some tips and tricks that I've learned, a lot of them the hard way, how to use basic math to simplify some otherwise complex formulas, how to create simple formula fields that you can use to build dynamic report filters so that you or your users don't have to edit your report filter criteria every time you run the report, and how to do a simple validation rule formula logic test. Now, the formulas that I'm going to show you aren't overly complex. They're a lot like this is my favorite formula in the whole world. This is called the power of one. And I didn't create it. It was created by a guy named Tom Tobin, and I learned it from him. And It's the simplest, most powerful formula I've ever seen in my life. And I use it every single day. I use it on every object. I use it nearly every single report or dashboard that I run on my org. And I use it every day, just like that pocket knife next to it. It opens bottles of beer, it opens bottles of wine, and I use it every day. Now this...
Steve, I think you're not sharing your screen.
Oh no, crap. Hold on a sec.
Really you over here. I think you need that at the moment.
All right, hold on a sec. Sorry about that. I was halfway through my big sales pitch. All right, let's start that all over again. Hold on a sec.
The problem, let's start it again. Are you still facing an issue?
What a sec. I'm much better at Salesforce than I am at PowerPoint or Zoom meetings. Hold on a sec.
If you're not able to, would you be able to like rejoin?
Oh, hold on a sec.
Yeah, sure.
Hold on a sec. Oh, it's saying it fails to share. Hold on a sec. I'm sorry about this, everybody.
Finally.
Finally. All right.
Let's get it started.
Success. All right.
Success.
Finally. All right. So, I'm Steve Mullis, or if you remember the Salesforce community, you may know me as Steve Mo, and I am not known for my PowerPoint presentations, obviously. And a little bit about myself that you already know. And so in the interest of time, I'll just fast forward. Yes, there's my safe harbor slide. And I'm going to show you some, how to use some basic math to simplify some complex formulas, how to run a PowerPoint slide, and how to use simple formula fields for dynamic report filters so that you can create a report and you don't have to edit the report filter criteria every time you need to run it, and how to do a simple validation rule formula logic test. So this is the most complicated formula I've ever written. I wrote this in response to a question somebody posted in the Answers community, and they were trying to calculate the percent of the month remaining in business days so that they could do prorated invoicing. And next to it that is an actual thing. That's not a Photoshop, that's not fake. That is a Victorinox Swiss Champ VATX pocket knife. It's got 84 tools, it costs $450, and it weighs nearly a pound. Now this is my favorite formula in the whole world. And I didn't create this formula. This was created by a guy named Tom Tobin, who used to work for Salesforce. It's called the Power of One. And I use this formula every day. I use it on every object. When I create a custom object, it is the first custom field I add to that object. I use it in every report, every dashboard. And next to it is my favorite pocket knife. It opens bottles of beer, it opens bottles of wine, and I use it every day. And so the formulas that I'm going to show you are just like this pocket knife. They're simple yet powerful formulas that you can use every day, whether you're on Lightning or Classic, whether you're on Unlimited Edition or Group, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're high tech, whether you're manufacturing, any business model, any use case. These are simple, powerful formulas that you can use on nearly every standard and custom object. A lot of them reference standard fields that are on, opportunities, leads, cases, simple but powerful formulas. So I'm going to show you how to use basic math to simplify some otherwise complex formulas. Now, the first formula, this actually came from a question that was posted in the Answers community. It was posted by a guy named Bart Ward. Now, Bart was trying to create a validation rule on his opportunity object that would prevent users from moving an opportunity stage backwards to a previous stage in the sales cycle. See, for his company, the stages were like milestones. A deal could only be cultivated, then have the proposal submitted, then go to negotiation, and then to its inevitable closure as a win or a loss. A deal couldn't be cultivated, have proposals submitted, and then go back to cultivation. A deal could only move forward to win or loss. And you can see he posted in his question his first attempt at writing that validation rule. And he was trying to use a function called isPickVal. Now in my solution, I used a function called case, a function called prior value, and a less than operator. But Bart was trying to use isPickVal. Now, isPickVal is a perfectly good function. It's purpose-built to evaluate a pick list field, look for a value that you provide, and then return a result or perform an action if it finds that value. But you can see that isPickVal isn't the most efficient function in the world. See, every value you look for, you got to make another call to that field using another isPickVal. It's like you got an Alexa and you got to say, Alexa, are there zombies outside? Okay, run. Alexa, is it hot outside? Okay, let's go to the beach. Alexa, is it warm? Alexa, is it snowing? So rather than using isPickVal, I used a function called case. Now case is much more efficient than isPickVal. It's with case, it's like you go to the field one time with your entire list of values and your entire list of actions to perform. So using case, I went to the stage field and I looked for the first value in the opportunity stage pick list field. Now, as the sysadmin, I have access to the stage pick list. I can see all the values that are in there. So I copied and pasted the entire list of stages into my formula. And using case, I simply turn the first stage into the number 1. I turn the second stage into the number 2. I turn the third stage into the number 3. Now, Bart had 17 stages in his opportunity sales process. I couldn't even fit the entire formula into a single slide, even using 4-point font. So in the interest of time and space, I close things down and only have 7 stages. But I'm basically turning words into numbers. I'm turning stage 1 into the number 1. I'm turning stage 2 into the number 2. I'm turning stage 3 into the number 3. Now you'll notice I made the last 2 stages, closed won and closed lost, both equal to the highest number because they are the last stage in the cycle. Now, I may have flunked out of community college, but even I know that 1 is less than 2 and 3, and 2 is less than 3, 4, and 5. I'm taking an entire list of stages and I'm just turning them into numbers from the lowest stage to the highest stage. Then I took the exact same formula that I wrote. This is all one formula. I took the first case statement that I wrote, and I copied and pasted it back into the formula. But in my second case statement, I wrapped a prior value function around the stage name. Now I'm turning the previously selected stage into a number from 1 to 6. And then in between my first case statement and my second case statement, I just inserted a less than mathematic operator. I'm just doing simple, basic math, turning words into numbers using a case statement and a prior value function. Now, if a user moves an opportunity to the third stage, and they edit it and try to move it back to the second stage or the first stage, they're blocked from doing that. They can only save the opportunity in the current stage or move it further along in the process until it's closed won or closed lost. Now, this next one, this also came from a question that was posted in the Answers community, and this was posted by Margaret Manna. She had a multi-select pick list field. Now, I have a confession to make. I hate multi-pick list fields. To me, multi-pick list fields are good at 3 things: allowing the user to select one or more things from a list of options, sucking, and I forget what the third one is. But you're gonna run into them as an admin. I mean, I hate them with a passion, but even I have multi-pick list fields on my org. As an admin, I can only push back so hard, and sometimes I have to create multi-pick list fields. And you're gonna run into them as an admin, just like Margaret did. And users pick things in multi-pick list fields. And someday, like Margaret, you're gonna need to get the count of the things that were selected in the multi-pick list field. But the problem is, the values selected in a multi-pick list are just stored as a lump of semi-comma delimited text, and you cannot pass out the values that were selected. So the solution I came up with was to create a custom formula field on the object that returns a number as the result. And I used a function called if, a function called includes, and a plus operator. Now, the includes function is kind of like the multi-select pick list version of isPickVal. It's a function that is purpose-built to evaluate a multi-select pick list field, look for a value that you provide, and if it finds it, perform an action or return a result. Now, if you've never used an if function, if works on the if then else principle. If a condition that you provide is found, then the formula does something that you tell it to do. If the condition that you're looking for is not found, then you tell the formula to do something else. If, then, else. So I open up my first if statement. I use the includes function to query the multi-pick list field. I look for the first value in the multi-pick list menu, because again, as the admin, I have access to the entire list of values in the field. And here's the thing, I don't need to look for every possible combination of values in the multi-pick list field. I'm just looking for each of the values in the menu one at a time. So I look for the first value in the multi-pick list menu. If the multi-pick list field includes the first value, then I return the number 1, or else I return the number 0. Then I close that if statement out because I'm done looking for that first value. Then I add a plus operator and open up another if statement. And I open up another includes function. Then I go back to the multi-pick list field and I look for the second value in the menu. If I find it, then I return a 1, or else I return a 0. Then I close out the if statement, I open up another plus operator, then I open up another if, then another includes, and I go back to the multi-pick list field again and again and again until I've looked for every single value in the menu. And I'm simply adding up all of those 1s and all of those 0s to get the count of things that were picked in the multi-pick list field. Now I can get a report or a chart that looks like this. Now the cool thing is, I wrote this formula so that Margaret could get the count of things that were picked for a report, but you could take this exact same formula, this exact same logic, and you could use it for a validation rule. Maybe you've got a multi-pick list field that's got 10, 15 options in it, and you want to limit the number of things that a person can pick to 5. You take the exact same formula, and at the end, you just add a greater than operator and the number 5, or whatever the maximum number of values you want to limit the user to, and you get a validation rule. Or maybe you got a multi-pick list field, and the user can pick as many things as they want, but if they pick 3 or more things, they qualify for a discount or an upgrade or expedited shipping, or maybe you need to trigger a process or an email alert or an approval. Simple, simple formula. You could, a couple of tweaks, you could turn this formula into a validation rule, a workflow or a process trigger, approval process entry criteria, any number of things. Again, using nothing more than an if, includes, and basic math. Now next, I want to show you how to create some formula fields for dynamic report filters. And again, this formula actually came from a question that was posted in the Salesforce Answers community. And this question was posted by Sophie Curtis. Now, Sophie, she had a process where she worked where people were creating activities and then assigning the activities to another user. But they needed to be able to create a report or a list view to check on the status of those activities that they created but were now owned by somebody else. And Sophie wanted to be able to do this with just one report. So if you've ever created a report or a list view, you'll notice that there's a standard set of filters, and one of them is my leads, my accounts, my opportunities, my contacts, my activities. But for Sophie, she needed this for the person who created the record but was no longer the owner. And for all those standard reports and report and list view filters, the me and my is the opportunity owner. See, what Salesforce is doing with those filters, it's taking the ID of the person who is looking at that report or looking at that list view and comparing it to the ID that is in the owner field. And Sophie wanted to do the same thing, but there's no companion for that for created by. So the solution I came up with was to create a custom field on the activity object, selected formula as my data type, and checkbox as my result type. Now, if you look at the screenshot of the question she posted, this question was posted so long ago that formula checkbox fields were not even a thing. So I had to write a formula number field for her that would return a 1 or a null, but along came formula checkbox fields. So the fields that I referenced in my formula are the created by ID, a thing called $user ID, and I used an equals operator. Now, when you create a formula and you click on the insert field button in the formula editor, you'll notice that the object that you're on, that's at the top, and in the panel to the right of it is the list of fields in that object. But below that object, there's all these things with $signs next to them. Those are global variables. And one global variable is $user. $user is the user who is logged in at that moment in that session. If we were all in the same org right now, and I'm logged in, creating a record, I'm $user. You're running a report, you're $user. Somebody else is looking at a list view, they're $user. Somebody else is editing a record, they're $user. And you can pull in fields using the formula editor from $user just like you can an object. So I go into the $user and I get the $user user ID. Then I get the created by ID. And I just use an equal sign to compare the two IDs to each other. And if I find a match, I return a checked or a true checkbox field. If I don't, I return a false or an unchecked checkbox field. Now I can get a report or a list view that looks like this. I can see every record that I created. whether I own the record or not. And it's got a checkbox. Now I can use that checkbox as a report or a list view filter. And with a single report, any user can see any record that they created, whether they own it or not. And you can do this not just with the created by field, you can do this with any field that holds a user ID. You can use last modified by, you can use a custom lookup user field, and it doesn't even have to be the user ID. It can be the user role, it can be the user profile. And now you can build simple dynamic reports. You don't have to have a separate report for every user filtered by their username or their user role or the user profile. You can have one report that any user can run anytime, and they'll see only the stuff that they created. Simple formula using just comparing two IDs to each other and returning a checkbox. So this next one also came from a question that was posted in the Answers community. This one was posted by a woman named Kelly Knudsen, and she needed to build a dynamic report that would show her sales from the first day of the month to the current day of the month, side by side. And just like Sophie, she wanted this report to be dynamic. She wanted to be able to run this report any day, any week, any month, any time of the year, and have the report return the month-to-date sales, no matter what day of the month it was, no matter what week of the month it was, no matter what month of the year it was. She didn't want to have to edit the date range filters every time she runs this report. So to solve this, I created a formula to compare the close date to the current date. And I did it using a formula field on the opportunity object that returns a checkbox as the result. So I referenced the close date, and I used a function called day, a function called today, and a less than or equals operator. Now, if you've never done date time formulas before, the today function returns the current date. That's all it does. Today, the today function will return May 17th. Tomorrow, it will return May 18th. The next day, it's going to return May 19th. That's all it does. It returns whatever day today is until the end of time. Now, the day function evaluates a date field or a date value, and it just returns the number of the day. It doesn't care what year it is. It doesn't care what month it is. If an opportunity had a close date of December 25th, 2019, and you wrap the day function around the close date field, it's going to return the number 25. If today is May 17th, 2020, and you wrap a day function around the today function, it's going to give you back the number 17. So I created a formula field on the opportunity object that returns a checkbox as my result. And I compare the day of the opportunity close date to the day of today. And if the day of the opportunity close date is less than or equal to the day of today, it's going to return a true or a checkbox. If it's not, it returns a false or an unchecked checkbox. So today is May 17th or day 17. If the opportunity closed on the 4th of July, that's going to return the number 4. And that's going to return a true or a checkbox. If the opportunity closed on March 31st, 31 is not less than 17. It's going to return a false or an unchecked checkbox. Now, the cool thing about formulas or formula fields is they're dynamic, and the second you hit save, that formula field is automatically available in every standard report type for that object. Now, one little caveat. If you're dealing with a custom report type, custom report types do not automatically inherit newly created custom fields. You do need to edit the custom report type layout for it to recognize the newly created field. But the second you hit save, that field is now available in any standard opportunity report type, including existing reports that are built on standard opportunity report types. You simply grab your new month-to-date formula field that you just created and add it to an existing report as your filter criteria and select month-to-date equals true. Now you can get a report that looks like this. I ran this report on the 10th of the month, and I can see month by month, side by side, my sales for the first 10 days of the month. Now, if I ran this report the next day, it's going to show me the sales for the first 11 days of the month. And the day after that, it's going to show me the sales for the first 12 days of the month. And it will automatically do that every single time I run this report. And at the beginning of the next month, the whole thing is automatically going to reset and start counting from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 to day 4. I never have to edit this report or the date range filters ever again, using nothing more than a formula checkbox field, a couple of day functions, and some basic math. Now, this next one, I actually had to build this one in my own org. It was similar to the one I built for Kelly, but in my instance, I had to create a dynamic report that will show the year-to-date sales. So, but again, I wanted this report to be dynamic. I didn't want to have to edit this report every single time I ran it. So I used the today function once again, another function called year, and a function called date, and again, a less than or equals to operator. And I created a formula checkbox field on the opportunity object. Now, the today function, as I said before, it returns the current date. The year function is kind of like the day function's cousin. It goes into a date field or a date value, and it doesn't care about the month, it doesn't care about the day, it just pulls out the 4-digit number of the year in that date field or that date value. The date function allows you to create a date value by providing it with the 4-digit year, the 2-digit month, and the 2-digit day. So what I needed to do to build my dynamic report was count the day of the opportunity close date and the day of today in the year. So if you want to count the number of days from January 1st to the current date, you subtract the earlier date from the later date. So if you're trying to calculate the duration, and this messes up a lot of people. To calculate the duration, you subtract the start date or the earlier date from the later date. A lot of people get messed up when they get into calculating duration and date time formula, stuff like that. You subtract the earlier date from the later date because that's the lower value, and the remainder is going to be a duration. So if you want to calculate somebody's age in days, you subtract their birth date from today's date. If you want to get the day of the year, you subtract January 1st of the year from today's date. If you want to get the date in an opportunity closed, you subtract January 1st of the year the opportunity closed from the opportunity close date. So I use the today function, that gives me today's date. Year wrapped around the today function is going to give me the year 2020. Year wrapped around the close date field is going to give me whatever year that opportunity closed. So again, I have to get the duration or to get the day of the year, I have to subtract January 1st of that year from the opportunity close date and January 1st of this year from today's date. So to build my January 1st for the current year, I open up the date function.
I'm very sorry. We have only 5 minutes left. So.
Oh, really? Oh, crap.
Yeah, it was a nice session. I think we should go and take some QAs as well. So let's try to wrap this up. Yeah.
Okay. So I created a custom formula field, and I compare the day that the opportunity closed to the day of today. So if the opportunity closed on February 15th, That's day number 46 of the year. Today is day 138 of the year. 46 is less than 138. So my formula is going to return a checked checkbox or a true checkbox. If the opportunity closed on November 30th, that's day 334. 334 is not less than or equal to 138. It's going to return a false or an unchecked checkbox. So now, just like I did before for Kelly, I grab my formula checkbox field, add it to my report, and now I can get a report that looks like this. I ran this report in April, and I can see side by side my year-to-date sales for 2018, 19, and 20. And if I ran this report today in May, it would automatically update up to May 17th. And if I run again in November, it's going to show me year by year my sales from the first of the month to that day, first of the year to that day of the year. So last but not least, this is something I came up with. I'm sorry, I screwed up the slides and I ate up like 5-10 minutes of the session, but I really want to squeeze this one in. So this one is something I came up with to test validation rule formula logic. So if you've ever written a formula field and you use the check syntax button, it checks the syntax, but it doesn't check the logic of your formula. But validation rules are Boolean. They're either true or they're false. And so a checkbox fields. A checkbox is either true or false. So if we need to create a validation rule to prevent users from adding an open opportunity with a close date in the past, we would evaluate the stage name, the close date, and compare it to today's date. So if the validation rule returns a true value, that means the record fails the validation rule. So we could write a validation rule like this, but Salesforce strongly recommends that we don't use the isClosed function field in validation rule formulas. So we could write it like this, compare the close date to today's date, and check to see if the user selected closed won or closed lost, and if they didn't, block the user from saving the record. Or we could write it like this, or this. So rather than write this validation rule, put this formula in a validation rule, we're going to put it into a formula checkbox field on the opportunity object. And we're going to check our syntax, but we're also going to check our logic. So we put this formula into our formula checkbox field, and we create a report or a list view that shows our opportunities, the fields we're evaluating, and our validation rule test checkbox side by side, and we can see that we've got a problem. Closed won and closed lost opportunities should be exempt from our validation rule, but they have a checkbox. So users would be blocked from editing these records. The problem is the or. By adding the word or, we've created a loophole from which our formula, our validation rule will never escape, unless our validation rule is Schrodinger's cat. So we remove the or clause from our formula and wrap it and around the entire thing. And we put this formula into our formula checkbox field. And now we can see, using a report or a list view, that our validation rule is functioning properly. And I really blew through that. I'm sorry.
Steve, we due to the request from all the attendees, we are trying to increase the session for more 5 minutes, if that's cool for you. And
oh yeah, I'm sorry. I screwed up the PowerPoint at the beginning. So one caveat to using the validation rule checkbox field. Not every function that is available in a validation rule is available in a formula field. You can't use the is new function in a formula field. You can't use is changed. You can't use prior value, and you can't use VLOOKUP. I wish I hadn't screwed up. I wish I hadn't screwed up so bad at the beginning. I really wanted to show you.
You're completely good. Good, Steve. People are ready to wait. I think you can continue. We have time. We have some time spare.
Okay. So yeah, sorry. So I kind of like blew through this thing at the end. I'm sorry about that. So the way that this whole thing works is if you write a validation rule, you really don't have any way of testing how this validation rule is going to behave across all of your data. You've got to like manually edit a couple of records to make sure that records that should fail your validation rule are failing your validation rule, and records that should be passing your validation rule do in fact pass. But there's not really an easy way to do it on scale. And so this is how I came up with this, or the reason behind it. By using a custom field on the object that returns a checkbox result, I can run tests of my validation rules on hundreds, thousands, millions of records in real time by using a using a formula checkbox field to test my formula logic. Does anybody, I mean, I don't know how much time we have left.
So Steve, I think we can give more 3 to 4 minutes for the slides, and then we have to take some question and answers. Okay. We have plenty of time.
All right, so I see one. So did Salesforce recently release something that made the Power of One obsolete? They did release something, but it does not make the Power of One obsolete. They, in the last release, or the one before that, in Lightning reports, there is a new thing called Count Unique. And it's a really cool thing. I don't want people to think that I'm hating on Count Unique, but it does have a couple of shortcomings that the Power of One doesn't. First of all, Count Unique is only available in Lightning Report Builder. The Power of One is available in Lightning or Classic. You can only use Count Unique 3 times in a Lightning report. You can use the Power of One on as many objects as you can pull into a report. Also, I don't think Count Unique is readily available in the report formula editor, whereas the Power of One, it's a field, so it's readily available in the formula editor. I don't hate Count Unique. It does have, it's a great thing, but I don't think the Power of One is dead quite yet. See, so when should we use case instead of if else? It's really a judgment call. I love to use case instead of if else, especially if I'm dealing with a known set of values, like a pick list field. Like I know as an admin, I've got access to the entire list of values in that field. So I love to use case with pick list fields, or if I'm doing something like a date formula with month. I mean, there's 12 months of the year. That's it. There's January month 1, December month 12, and that's it. So I love using case for date formulas that involve month or another absolute, pick list fields, or text fields where I can isolate the values that I'm looking for. Let's see, in the issue to prevent the stage from moving backwards, wouldn't this result in error if the pick list is changed? Not sure what they mean. If the pick list values are updated, you would need to update the formula, but as an admin, you got to be mindful of that. When you're updating a field, you do need to be mindful of where that field is used, if it's being used in any kind of a validation rule or a workflow or process. It's part of your due diligence as an admin.
Shiv, I think we have to stop here.
Okay,
I'm so sorry.
sorry about that.
So sorry, attendees.
Thank you so much for everybody for sticking with me. I'm sorry about the problems at the beginning. Hopefully we can do this again and I'll get it right.